Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. There's some concerns that municipalities will not be able to take advantage of BEAD funding due to program rules and competition. Be right back to take a quick look. Hey there, Rick Uzzi with Z-Quorum with Broadband Deployment News. So I saw this story, wanted to comment on it. So this is in Community Networks. Also, it was originally published on Broadband Breakfast here. So you see federal municipal networks support declining, warns experts. So experts express concern that federal support for municipal broadband is limited, promoting uncertainty about future funding and operational sustainability at a Fiber for Breakfast event Wednesday. Tyler Cooper, editor-in-chief of Broadband Now, a website that provides resources for internet providers, said that the BEAD program grants are less promising for municipal broadband deployments, despite initial promises. It says, we want to make sure BEAD funding areas have a vibrant, competitive marketplace for decades to come, said Cooper. It is here that I think municipal providers stand to make the most impact over time. You see here, municipal providers have been a lifeline to residents in these areas. They spur competition and innovation. They build future-proof technologies, primarily fiber, and they're more in tune in general with the needs of their communities than other providers. So, certainly some municipalities have done very well with their broadband networks, and a lot of that happened when there was not much competition, or those that were there were not willing to do anything. We've seen less of that, as fiber has gotten more prevalent. More operators are installing fiber, certainly in greenfield areas. Where it's been an issue is if you had an incumbent provider that was covering an area and they had older technology, and/or they didn't want to cover everywhere because you've got dense areas of the community, of the city, municipality that are easy to cover, and then you've got other areas that are further out that are still within the city limits where maybe operators didn't want to go. So some cities went ahead and took on that broadband network themselves. In some cases because they really felt they had to. In other cases because they felt they could. Maybe they had the resources to do it. They had seen other municipalities do it, and they felt like if we do this, we will be able to provide the best service available for a lower price, since we're a not-for-profit, so to speak. We are in the community, maybe where it might be a national provider that was not so community-oriented. So that's kind of the thinking there. And, again, they would have the motivation to connect everybody within the city limits if they did that. So some municipalities have taken that on. Some did not want to take that on. They didn't at all. They would seek to work with providers that were local to them and see if they would come in. And in some cases, they might do a public-private partnership with them. They might do an open access network where they build the network and let somebody else run it, and they partner there. So there's all kinds of options. But and a lot of municipalities don't want to do this because they're just, they're not in that business. And unless they have somebody there driving that who says, yeah, we'll figure it out, we'll understand the technology, then that's just not going to happen. You see that. You see the municipalities that have a drive to do it, maybe based on the mayor or technology people there that think they can do it. Others look at it and go, you know what, we know gas, we know water, we could learn broadband, but do we really need to? And then they might reach out for other options, including working with an incumbent or somebody like that. So it says here, Cooper expressed concern that BEAD rules and requirements may not favor municipal networks, potentially favoring larger ISPs. BEAD has become a much less promising vehicle for deploying municipal broadband networks. Well, certainly the notice of funding opportunity makes it pretty clear that they would prefer that a not-for-profit, for example, like a municipality or electric membership co-op, get the funding because they can provide the services at a lower price because they don't have to have a profit on top of running the business and covering the cost. They don't have to have a profit for their shareholders, for example, or their owners. So that can lower the price a little, although not a lot. When you look at the pricing, it's not like there's this huge amount of profit in it for the owners of the network, despite what people think and the greedy broadband companies, cable companies, telephone companies. There's not that much profit in it. So if you look at the pricing that's being offered by a for-profit company like a telephone company, cable company, and then what is being offered, let's say, in an area by a municipality, it's usually not that different. There might be a little lower price, and certainly they have some ability there to have some room, but it's not all that different when you look at it. And as I mentioned, the notice of funding opportunity kind of does really want this to be in place. In fact, if we look at, this is the notice of funding opportunity here, you see this is under the last mile broadband deployment project. So number 6 here, the eligible entity may not exclude as a class cooperatives, nonprofit organizations, public-private partnerships, private companies, public or private utilities, public utility districts, or local governments from eligibility as a subgrantee. So we'll see here in a moment in the article, it talks about some states that have still, I guess, some restrictions on municipal broadband, but I don't see how those restrictions remain in place if those states want to be able to get BEAD funding, because I would think that the NTIA, as they look at the money and who the subgrantees that are being looked at, and I'm sure that they're looking at the initial proposals and all those things now. I don't know when they cover that, but if a state has a very restrictive policy as far as, let's say, municipal broadband being an option, then I would think they would be in touch with the state and saying, this can't fly, you can't do this with this funding. So, and then also, something else in here, you see affordability and low-cost plans. Each eligible entity must include in its initial final proposal a middle-class affordability plan to ensure that all consumers have access to affordable high-speed internet. We expect that eligible entities will adopt diverse strategies to achieve this objective. Some might require providers to offer low-cost, high-speed plans. Some might provide consumer subsidies to help pay for those. Some might use their regulatory authority to promote structural competition. And that's kind of the opposite of saying that you're using your authority to prevent municipal broadband. You might use your authority to promote that competition somehow. Some might assign especially high weights to selection criteria relating to affordability and/or open access in selecting BEAD subgrantees. So it's not saying there necessarily that they could favor a municipality, but they could say that they would favor an open access network, which would lend itself to, again, maybe a partnership between a municipality and another provider that would work together, and really other providers in that case. And that is something, the open access network does kind of apply to the low cost scenario there. But again, a municipality is quite often involved in that. But by having one network and multiple ISPs, so to speak, that really aren't doing the technology, but that are marketing over that, and have certain services that they're providing over that, that does drive down the costs a little bit, because you've got people competing, multiple operators competing over the same network, as opposed to one network and one operator that doesn't have any competition. So it's a combination of these methods or other methods not mentioned here could be used. So what they're saying here, the NTIA, is that a lot of this is up to the state, the eligible entities of the state, and it's up to them as to how they might promote what they want. So some of whether or not a municipality could have a more favorable landscape, so to speak, would be dependent on the state. And again, the state's not supposed to be able to exclude them, but do they favor them? Some states might want to do that by doing something like this, by again having higher points for an open access network, higher points for affordability, where that might give, again, a municipality that doesn't have a profit motive, might give them a little bit of a step up there as far as being able to say that we'll have a lower price, or this is the price that we're going to offer it compared to others. So there are some options there, but a lot of that does lie within the state, and their purview is right here, as you can see. So during President Joe Biden's presidential campaign, Biden made bold promises to encourage local solutions to the digital divide, explicitly stating that the community broadband networks would be prioritized, said Cooper. One of the major things that they promised was to remove state-level barriers that restrict the development of municipal broadband. And again, in the notice of funding opportunity, you can't exclude municipalities. So in a sense, it's in there. But also something that is not going to fly would be, kind of a not level playing field from the standpoint of saying that, only municipals can provide broadband in certain areas. You have to allow everyone to compete. That's not good for business. The Republicans would certainly not stand for that. They want to make sure that, private industry is represented there if at all possible. So it says, we have essentially received none of those things, he concluded. President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association, Gary Bolton, expressed the challenges of seeking federal funding. The rules are tilted away from municipal networks. And I didn't watch this, so there might have been more discussion. But what he may be talking about there is that there are, again, this is just the notice of funding opportunity. There are lots of rules in there that need to be taken, that sometimes will favor large companies. It could be things about the type of labor that you hire, being able to do studies on the environment, and all kinds of stuff that is really not related to deploying broadband. So that's bad for everybody who's not really big. That's bad for small independent providers in the area, small cable companies, telephone companies, municipalities, maybe electric membership co-ops. So that is just something where it does kind of favor the larger companies because they have the attorneys and they have the resources as far as lots of money to be able to do some of those things. He added that larger ISPs may go after the funding to prevent municipalities from taking it. Well, again, you can't really. They might, and they certainly have the right to do that. But if they're already in the area, they might do that. If they're not in an area, they might not. The thing with municipality is, again, it's fairly going to be a fairly dense area, other than the kind of outskirts of the area. So those are areas where, a large company might come in. But again, if they don't have adjacent infrastructure there, then you've probably got an independent cable operator or a phone company that's there, and they might want to go after it, and they don't have an advantage as far as let's say being able to foot all of the costs for all of these extraneous things that are not related to broadband. So unless it's a large municipality where you've already got a AT&T and a Comcast and others that are right there, maybe providing service in the area, or it doesn't have to be that large, I guess, but that are already there. You've got these small independent operators that are there. And those small independent operators, if it's expensive for them and it's expensive for the municipality, then maybe they can get together and do a public-private partnership, do an open access network, something like that. Again, just a public-private partnership where maybe the cable company that's in the municipality that would love to upgrade their network to fiber could partner with the city. They could get that done together and then provide the service together. Because, again, a lot of municipalities, they don't necessarily want to be in the business. They don't necessarily want to be selling another service. If they don't have to, they might not have the technical expertise to do it. They don't have the marketing or sales expertise to do that. And if there's a company right there that does, why not partner with them? Cooper recommended a comprehensive approach would redesign the subsidy program for the post-BEAD world, potentially using something like a cost-based system going backwards, hearkening to the original Universal Service Fund, or USF. Not sure what he means there. There are currently 16 states with laws prohibiting or making it difficult for broadband municipal networks to be established. However, in May, Minnesota removed its municipal limitation. And again, I think others will. They'll be forced to if they want to use this money in certain areas. The New York State Assembly passed in April a budget bill without language that would hinder the deployment of public-owned broadband networks. So I think it's saying there that their budget would allow that, it would not hinder it. The proposed amendment would have altered the state's Connect All municipal infrastructure program, which makes nearly $230 million available for local governments and nonprofits to expand broadband infrastructure. And something else, again, talking about where the challenges are for broadband, a lot of times in these municipalities, it's a lot less of a challenge because, again, more customers located closer together in a smaller area with some outskirts. But then you've got these vast areas between the municipalities. When I'm thinking, small towns, mid-sized towns, then you've got states where you've got farmland and rural areas in between all of these. Those are the areas that are really the hardest to cover. And that's where the electric membership co-ops come in. And that's where they would have the best opportunity to be able to make use of this, assuming that, again, all of the rules don't make it difficult for them. Because that's one of the concerns, is that some of these rules that are not really that much related, if it's about diversity and employment and the environment and those kinds of things, are they really related to broadband deployment and trying to do all of those things? Does that hinder it for these smaller operators that are not used to doing those kinds of things and can't pay for that? Where electric membership co-ops, they are in a perfect position to be able to provide broadband to these rural areas because that's how they got started. They got started doing that with power. Not everybody had power. You had these EMCs open up, and they now have infrastructure going to every single location that should also have broadband generally. If it's got power, you can get broadband there. It's just a question of how do you do it, but they already have power poles, they've got underground infrastructure, they've got a lot of times fiber running between their substations. They have a relationship with every single customer. It's just a question of doing it. So they are in a perfect position to be able to do that if nobody else steps up to. And there are a lot of these rural EMCs that have been doing that. So again, they're in a great position and would be taking advantage of that. So again, I think municipalities that want to do this will figure out a way to do it. Those that don't won't get involved and there are those that maybe they'll try to work with others, and there are those that maybe are on the fence, and it's like if we don't do something, then we're still going to be left behind because nobody's stepping up to do it. If a municipality sees that a large MSO or somebody is going to come in and do it, they may be fine with that. Again, they may not necessarily want to do that. They may be thinking it's fine. We've just not been happy with the service we're getting here. It's been, let's say, older cable infrastructure or DSL, and if somebody can come in and really bring that service up, again, they're only going to get money if the service. That's another thing. They're only going to get money if the service is, if these areas are unserved. If it's already served by a cable operator and they're doing over 100 by 20, there's no funding for that area. But if a cable operator can come in and say, you know what, we're going to take funding and we're going to upgrade everybody to higher speeds, DOCSIS speeds, let's say. We're going to upgrade everybody to higher DOCSIS speeds, and any new locations we're going to do fiber. There's a way to work it all out with these municipalities. Because again, in the municipality, generally, they're going to have some kind of decent service in the most dense areas, and then where it gets out to the outskirts is where it tends to be a problem. So again, I don't know for sure if the municipalities are struggling with this. I think a lot of them are probably, if the rules were easier, they might do it, or some of them may be saying, you know what, let's leave this to somebody else and see what happens. They have their own business that they're trying to run. Some of them would love to jump in there, so it's going to vary across the board. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, or make sure it's rung to be notified when I am live. And then if you like this video, if you give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. I'll see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.